have a rough idea where we're going with our voices. But before we go into that, can you please tell me what the state of emergency GBV really means? What does it stand for and what does it do?
Thank you. So in June last year, we all heard about the young woman that was killed in a church. She was raped and killed. I was first introduced to sexual and gender-based violence via my work a few years before. And I remember constantly agonizing to my friends that we're not making as much progress as we should make in ensuring that we can roll back the incidence of sexual and gender-based violence. But when this young woman was killed, I remember sitting on my sofa and crying. And I called a few of my friends, about 6 of them that day. And I said, look, I know we're in the middle of a lockdown. I know that, everything is going on, the pandemic, blah, 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 but we cannot not do something. And this was the 2nd of June. This was the 3rd of June. And by the 5th of June, we were on the streets in Abuja. We went to the to Louis Edet House, which is the police headquarters. We also went to have a meeting with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. And we literally said to him, you need to declare a state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria. Unfortunately, 1 year after, we haven't seen justice for Vera, the young lady who was killed in the church in Edo State. However, what we've managed to do is via pictorial representation, activate citizens to be able to use their voices to demand some sort of holistic and urgent response from their leaders, whether it's their governors, their state houses of assembly, to ask them what is the action you are taking on sexual and gender-based violence in the country. So that's basically what it is. We're now working on a manual so that we can onboard celebrities to use the power of their voices to join in this conversation, but not just pointed towards legislators and governors and people like that, but also as citizens, because we've seen that when a person speaks up about sexual and gender-based violence, you often get the questions, what were they wearing, where did they go, why did they go to his house, why did they drink the alcohol, and all of those types of things. And as far as I'm concerned, there is no other place to put blame when an incident of sexual and gender-based violence has occurred than on the perpetrator. And so we feel like if we onboard celebrities and let them use their voices and use their platforms to tell people, if someone speaks to you about this, these are the things that help. These are the things that don't help. These are the ways in which rape culture is enthroned in our society. We can kind of work at the problem from 2 ends. First, from the legal and policy place, which is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, but also from the part of citizens, so that because you buy a girl a bottle of Coke and a piece of bread, it does not, it's not an invitation to treat and must not be treated as such. So that's basically what we do with that.
All right. Statistically, is there an increase, or is gender-based violence on the upswing in our society right now? And these days, it looks as if there's also gender-based violence affecting the men. A gentleman in the media was killed the other day, or reputed to be killed by some lady or the other, or she had some kind of hand in his killing. So how is it swinging now, and is there an upswing, and why is that?
So unfortunately, because of the patriarchal nature of our society, when a man speaks up about, sexual and gender-based violence, it is often seen that he's weak, right? Because his peers will tell him, how woman will beat you, or it is often seen that an erection is proof of consent. It's not. Right? It's a bodily reaction to stimulus. It does not mean, for instance, that a man has given consent to engage in a sexual activity. And so because of shame, and it's the same shame we're trying to eradicate, men cannot speak up when they've been abused. I had a conversation with a man 2 years ago, and I was speaking to him about, the violence against persons, about the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. And he said, you women want to chase us out of Nigeria. And he started telling me about his ex-wife who had broken a bottle on his body, and he showed me the scars. And I asked him, why didn't you report to the police? And he said, I thought the VAP was only for women. So there's a big thing about education and men not knowing that they too can seek redress, can seek remediation when they have suffered any form of violence via the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. So it's not just for women, it's also for men as well. The second part of your question focused on, has there been an upswing or an uptick in incidents of violence? I'll answer that question 2 ways. First of all, there was a pandemic, which confined people to their homes and meant that, where women and children and boys and girls were able to escape violence by going to school or going to work, Everybody was now locked in at home. So abusers had nothing to do but abuse. I remember being called to a case last year by a nun, a Catholic nun, and in a community in Abuja. There was a 3-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy, and then a 5-year-old girl, and then I think a 6-year-old girl. Incidentally, their mother had been killed via the hands of her abusive husband. And so these children were being raised by an aunt. But somebody in the community had been abusing the 2 little girls, right? And it had gone unnoticed. But during this lockdown, people in the area saw the girls trying to get their baby brother, and forgive me for being graphic, trying to get their baby brother to put his hands into their privates. And so they're like, what are you people doing? And so the girl said, no, this is what this uncle normally does to us. So they're trying to show their baby brother. This is one of the stark effects of the lockdown, because it meant that all the abusers were in the same place, right? Nobody had the right to move. Nobody had the right to escape. And because the government unfortunately didn't prioritize sexual and gender-based violence, every time first responders went to respond to these types of cases, they would then get harassed by the police because they didn't have passes to be able to move around. So that's one side of it. The lockdown, the pandemic, definitely exacerbated the incidence of violence. Of course, there's also the frustration. People weren't able to work. There was increased poverty, and people would just take out all their frustrations on the weaker people around them, or on the people they considered to be weaker around them. Hence, physical abuse increased. The flip side to that is, following the Me Too movement, right, from a few years ago, and following a lot of work being done by people within civil society, there's a lot more awareness on what violence is, and more people are speaking up. Right, we've seen really high-profile cases in the last couple of years. We've also seen more allies, right? More allies saying, this person has spoken up about their experience. You can't shut them down. We're going to find a way to, offer remediation. People are also starting to see justice, whether it is justice in the courts of law or whether it is social justice perpetrated on social media or via digital. And I guess that's why it's important for us at the State of Emergency GBV movement to ensure that we continue to create spaces where people feel like they can speak up. But then beyond speaking up, what happens? I was part of a team that worked on the sex offender register launched in 2019, I believe, or 2018. And one of the big things I kept on saying through that review process was, we can't put out a phone number to citizens and not have the person who picks up the phone. Because you cannot call on people to be vulnerable with the pain and abuse that they felt, and then there's nobody, there's nobody to take it up, and there's nobody to provide the resources they need to heal, and there's nobody to follow it on with justice, which is why getting the laws passed in all of these states is super, super crucial. Super crucial, because more people are speaking up, and it's very important to ensure that they get the redress that they need. So that's about that.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I just want you to sort of try and answer them. Number one, you've been on quite a few campaigns. Enough is enough, Gen Voices, Occupy Nigeria, Bring Back Our Girls, Not Too Young to Run. What's the situation with each of these campaigns right now? What did they represent, and what did they achieve? And I'm particularly interested in the Bring Back Our Girls, because I do know that not all the girls are back. Some of them are sort of back. And what is the recourse that we have, especially for the girls that are not yet back?
So that's a very big question. But I'll try to respond. And I'd written down, some notes, and I guess, this is the time to mention one of them. One of the points, my point number 6 was define your successes. So if we start from, Enough is Enough Nigeria, going back 2009, Chude, and I'll tell a few stories here. Chude Jidonwo of Red Media sent an email to all of us asking, where's the outreach? At this time, former President Yar'Adua was sick and away from the country, and all sorts of, criminal activities were being perpetrated because the country did not have a president. And so Chude's email basically said, we're the largest demographic in this country, and yet no one's listening to our voices, and we don't have a president at the moment, etc. And he said, we should do something. That's how Enough is Enough was born. And we ended up going out on the streets in March of that year to protest both in Lagos and Abuja. Yeah, and after that, as we all know, the doctrine of necessity was invoked, and that's how, Goodluck Jonathan became president, and on and on and on. And then the next of them was Occupy Nigeria. I'm trying to remember what's in my bio. But yeah, the next of them was Occupy Nigeria of 2012. And of course, this was when former President Goodluck Jonathan had increased the pump price of fuel. I think it was on the first day of January of that year. And citizens literally went berserk because it's like, how do you do this? And there had been calls for, kind of like some sort of conversations or consultations with people, and that had been abandoned, and the price was just increased. And so people, reacted. I was living in the UK at the time, and I remember going from Birmingham to London, Charing Cross to the High Commission very early in the morning, because I'm not even sure I could afford, like a peak time ticket. So I went before, and it was super, super cold because it was January, we're like in the peak of winter, but it was important to make our voices heard. It was important to make our opinions known. And so that happened. Of course, the price was reduced, not back to what it was originally, but it was reduced. And I'll come back to that later. For Bring Back Our Girls, the girls were taken on the 14th of April 2014. And I remember that there had been a bomb blast in Abuja that day. One of my friends was close to the area. Thankfully, she was unharmed. Sadly, a lot more people were harmed by that incident. And then that night, those girls were taken from Chibok. The first protest held on I think it was the 28th of April, 2014. And I remember that I had just come into Nigeria at the time. And we were marching from Unity Fountain to the National Assembly, and it started raining. And Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, God bless her, said, we started turning back. Dr. Obi Ezekwesili said, "Are you salt?" And she started screaming, "Are you salt? Is a little rain so inconveniencing? Think about the situation of the girls." And so we continued marching. And so we marched to the National Assembly, and we marched back to Unity Fountain, and we said everything that we wanted to say, and we left. But I remember being so cold. I was shivering, and because it had rained on us for like a few hours nonstop. And I remember being so cold, and a few friends of mine, Mercy, Abang, El Nathan, John, we went to eat amala in a place, just to get the cold off our bodies. But I was shivering so bad. There was a random stranger there who came to me and gave me his jacket because I was shivering. Now, your question, part of your question asked how successful that had been. And that takes me to my point number 6, which is define your successes. Did we get all the girls back? No. But the truth is that every advocacy movement in Nigeria has given rise to the next. So even when the main reason for which people went out wasn't achieved, there is always a lesson to learn, and there's always something to carry forward. I strongly believe that, Light Up Nigeria of 2008 strengthened our voices for, Enough is Enough of 2009. I think that it also strengthened our voices for Occupy Nigeria of 2012. I also think it strengthened our voices for, Bring Back Our Girls of 2014, and on and on and on. For the Not Too Young to Run movement, which was convened by Samson Itodo, it was midwifed by Yaga Africa, and there was a strategic leadership team of about 12 of us drawn from across the country. And of course, there were the state coordinators from the 36 states of the country who were the, kind of like a very important leg to ensuring that the message of Not Too Young to Run was taken across the country, across ethnicities, transcending religion, and also transcending political party. Now, Not Too Young to Run simply sought to widen the pool of candidacy for people seeking to run for office in Nigeria. Was that successful? Yes, Mr. President signed that bill into law on the 31st of May, 2018. And then you come to the State of Emergency GBV movement of 2020, which I spoke about, which was essentially asking citizens to take charge of their destinies, but also to lean on their representatives to ensure that the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act is passed, but also to ensure that the government takes holistic, consistent, and a sustainable response to sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria. I hope I've managed to answer that big question.
I think so. To a large extent, you have. So, from your own perspective, Chioma, what is the problem with Nigeria?
A lack of consequences, very simply. And I say this everywhere. Our problem is not corruption. Our problem is a lack of consequences. We have shown each other that you just need to be big enough and you will escape every punishment for every bad thing that you do. And so the ambition now is not to avoid criminality. It is to do the criminality so well that you get so big that you can avoid every consequence. There are politicians in this country with almost lifetime injunctions, stopping the courts from prosecuting them for criminal offenses. We have also shown young people that it's okay to defraud people, use their money to run for office, and then return the monies to them. So it's like, we show people every day. We show people that once you're in office, you can rape a young girl and nothing will happen. You will remain in office. You will be able to use your power as a government official to escape prosecution. You will be able to use your power as a government official to model up, or to muddy up the waters around the investigation. So the problem with Nigeria is a lack of consequences. And I'll give a quick example. Yesterday on social media, we saw that a village had been mistakenly bombed by the army. And I remember asking my friends, how many times do we need to bomb these villages? Why aren't we bombing places in Banana Island and Lekki? Why aren't we bombing the installations and infrastructure belonging to really, really rich men in the north or in the northeast? But there are no consequences. The last couple times that the northeast has been bombed and, little communities, there was the Ran bombing from a few years ago. And even though the government tried to deny how many people were killed, there was satellite imaging that showed just how much the devastation was. What happened? Nothing. I think the Air Force shot down a military plane, recently. What happened? Nothing. And so we tell people that you can be bad, you can be really, really bad, and you can get away with it. The problem with Nigeria is a lack of consequences. That's what it is. Very simply, it's a lack of consequences.
And why is that? Why is there a lack of consequences in Nigeria? Why is there a lack of consequences? You've identified that as a problem. But why? Why should there be a nation where there are no consequences, or what has brought about there being a lack of consequences in Nigeria?
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell a small story. When I was getting my master's, I have a master's degree in social media. When I was getting my master's, there'd been an incident in the UK, something called it was like a chocolate scandal or something. There was I think a counselor or somebody who had misappropriated approximately £450 and used it for chocolates in their office. And it was such a massive scandal. And the way Oyibo people behave, the person came out and said, oh, I have let down my family, I have done this, I have done that, and the person resigned. And so in my class, our tutor at the time was asking us that, what is the place, of citizens or people within a community speaking up about things that have gone wrong, and how does it affect or influence, the public sphere, which is, these days often on social media, right? Or in digital spaces. And I didn't have anything to say because at the time I, just in my head, I was like £450. And at the time the pound was like 250. So that's 250 times 450 that a person had misappropriated. And because of that, that person resigned. And I was thinking about the monies that I had grown up, hearing that had been stolen in Nigeria, that had been misappropriated, that had been, all sorts of things. And there are no consequences. And so I think the reason why there are no consequences, and I'm going to hazard a guess because I've never really thought about that, but I think that the reason why there are no, firm consequences is because people want to leave room for themselves so that when they err, they are able to avoid those consequences as well. And unfortunately, you see this even play out on social media where if a person steals and they're Igbo, it's almost expected that Chioma won't say anything about them because she's Igbo as well. And if somebody is Yoruba and an Igbo person speaks, it's kind of like, no, you can't say anything because when Igbos were stealing, you didn't say anything. So allow our Yoruba person to steal. Same thing for the North, same thing for other parts of the country. And so it's almost like we're happy with crime when it's our person, right? And because we've come from a place where that criminality and the impunity of criminality has been so widespread, pervasive, whatever word you want to use, people are literally just waiting for their turn. And so what I think is a solution to that is somebody who is willing to, English people have a saying, not minding whose ox is gored, right? The person, might not live long if we're being really honest and practical with ourselves. But what we need is somebody who is able to damn the consequences, as it were, and say, look, if I'm going to go against, or if I'm going to attempt to bring some sanity into the system, I am going to do it irrespective of where a person is from, irrespective of what they worship, irrespective of how they have supported me or not. Unfortunately, that is clearly not the case in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, certain political parties have become, almost like the blood of Jesus, where you go into that party and all your sins are washed away. So people now conveniently commit crimes and then move into, the parties in power because they receive almost immediate absolution for their sins.
Right. So what do we do? 2023 is coming. We're in a situation where the naira falls almost on a daily basis. We're in a situation where 14 million children are out of school. We're in a situation where the economy is seriously challenged, and there's the highest level of insecurity that anyone has experienced in Nigeria thus far. What do we do? How do we ensure that come 2023, there will be consequences? How do we ensure that come 2023, girls will be brought back? There will be some kind of security if possible. What are your thoughts? And what is the power in our voice?
You have very big questions. But coming up to 2023, I think that people need to become knowledgeable. There's a lot of, rubbish flying around and not enough to counter it because people are simply not knowledgeable. And so people are able to rewrite history. People are able to tell stark lies because the people to whom these lies are getting told don't know history. We have a generation of people, an emerging generation of people who are passionate, who are excited, who are ready to go, but unfortunately who do not have as much knowledge as they should to be able to make the right decisions. And so it almost seems like we're going to make the same wrong decisions or make the same mistakes that had been made in the past. I remember being invited to work on a campaign, someone's campaign in 2011. And, my father is a bishop, by the way. So we talk a lot. And so I rang him and I'm like, look, I've been invited to work on this person's campaign. And he said, I pray every day that this person never rules Nigeria. Where do you think you will fall if you are now working for this person's campaign to succeed? And we had a full-on conversation and I ended up turning down that job, as lucrative as it could have been. In 2015, I was again invited to work on someone's campaign. And I was telling my father all the things that I had heard. Oh, this person is this person is now that, this person is now that, and the other. And my father said, because you have the internet, you think that, it can revise history. And by the time he was done speaking with me, I said, you know what, I actually don't want to work on this person's campaign anymore. And I walked away from it. And so I think that we must invest in knowledge, and if this brings me to the point that I had made, it's about the first one is knowledge about what is the problem. A lot of times we have politicians at all levels come to tell us, if you elect me as whatever it is, I will heal the sick, I will raise the dead, I will make the blind see, and all of those promises that we know they do not have the capacity to meet. So why do we vote them in? And so I think people must start to seek knowledge, earnestly seek knowledge, not because, the person is from this part of the country or the other, but because you are genuinely looking at, if I need to have surgery on my arm, I'm not looking for a plumber. I'm not looking for a carpenter. I'm looking for someone with skill to fix the problem on my hand. I'm not looking for my father's friend because my father's friend is such a great guy or because my father's friend loves me. No, I'm looking for a doctor. I'm looking for a chiropractor. I'm looking for somebody who can actually take care of the issue with my hand. And so that knowledge is needed. The knowledge is a nice segue to my next point, which is conviction. We must then become convinced. I believe that this person is the person that I'm going to vote for. This is the person I'm going to cast my votes for. This is the person I'm going to stand behind. And we must be led, by the strength of those convictions. A lot of us are like, there's a place in the Bible that says, swaying from side to side, it's like people are they're very easily swayed. There's like a shiny thing and you go for that. And then there's another shiny thing and then you go for that because there is no conviction. And so the knowledge that you have about the problems in your community should lead to a conviction that then tells you, I'm going to either support this person or this person is not the person for us. I think that we need to stop leaving campaigns to politicians. I think that we are at a point where Nigerians must now campaign for themselves. So somebody is coming to say, I'm going to do this. What are the youth in that community saying? What are the women saying? Right? One of the things we've been saying to the women in our networks is that when they come to ask for your vote, ask them what are their plans for women. What are their plans for young girls? I was in a meeting a few days ago, and the gender officer, one of the gender officers from the police, was talking about why are we trying to tell them when they can marry? You know, we're trying to tell them that they can't marry girls till they're 18 and that it goes against their religion. And I said to my friend sitting beside me, I'm like, I cannot believe I'm in a room where this is actually what we're discussing, where people feel no sense of, you know, nothing. And you are able to say it out loud in public that you want to be able to marry someone who's under 18. So when people come to campaign to you and tell you, oh, I will build a road, I will do this, I'll do that, ask them, what's their track record? What have you done? Especially returning officers, right? I mean, go to the National Assembly. It's like, you know, it's like the hospice for politicians. When they're done, they go there. There's some people who've been in the legislature for, you know, 5, 6 assemblies. So ask them, what have you done? How is my life better because you've been in office? And be led by the strength of that conviction. The other thing I'm going to say is you are stronger together. So have conversations with people. Do your own campaign. In this community, X named community, we are going to campaign for this, we are going to campaign for that. In that community, this is our challenge, we're going to campaign for that. It's reprehensible that at some point in this country, we had governors of states leading their states from Abuja. So your state is in chaos and you're in Abuja. You're either ruling your state from Abuja, you're ruling your state from Dubai. And then come another election cycle, people will receive 2,000 naira and 3,000 naira and put that person back in office. I remember monitoring elections in 2019, and at some point I went on WhatsApp and I was saying to people, come out and vote, because we'd gone to one particular polling unit and there were supposed to be about 300 people to vote. An hour to when the polls would close, only 9 people had shown up. 9 out of 300, an hour to when the polls would close. So for me, it's knowledge, it's conviction, and it's sharing that knowledge and that conviction with others, but also taking action. You know, people say, you know, we'll pray, God will do it. You know, God's not going to come down and vote. God's not going to come down and change our leaders either. You know, there's a scripture my father likes to quote for me, and he says, Paul planted, Apollos watered, God gave, you know, the increase. Where are you planting? Who is watering what? You know, are we all just trying to be in favor with the party in power, or are we really, really, really invested in ensuring that we have a better life? I saw a tweet earlier today where somebody was complaining in 2014 that the dollar was 181, you know, naira. $1 was 181 naira. And I responded to that tweet and said, you know, 2021 was probably looking at that post and laughing, because the dollar now is about 550 or 560. And so it's like, what are we doing? What are we as the citizens doing? How are we holding to account the people who we elected to make our lives better? Are our lives better? Almost every day there's the incident of one person was stabbed here, one person was murdered there. A friend of ours in August was killed in his home in Abuja. These are things that were alien to us. What are we doing about that? What are citizens doing? That's the question.
What should we do?
We should get knowledge. We need to get knowledge. We need to become knowledgeable. We need to work on the conviction that knowledge brings. You know, I just said that. And we need to share those convictions with others, because we can't go it alone. Nigeria is too big for anyone to go it alone. That's my answer to that.
Okay. You run an NGO, don't you?
I run a social enterprise. There's a difference.
Okay, what's the difference?
So we are a social enterprise in the sense that we can receive grants, right? So we can be funded by donor organizations, etc. But we can also work and make our own money. And for a long time, that's what we did. We were commissioned to do work. So in the same way you have like a service level agreement. So we would be commissioned to do work, and then we would plug the profits from that into charitable things that we wanted to do. For instance, we did some work for the British Council and the EU in 2018, and the monies we made from that work, we then plugged into our school tour project, which reached 6 schools, 6 local education authority schools in Abuja. So that's the difference.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Chioma. Pastor is in transit, but we'll get talking. And the reason why I asked that question was we wanted to know, you are involved in a lot of advocacy because you've spoken a lot about getting knowledge, seek knowledge, get informed, get empowered to be able to take action. Now you are involved in that space. And indeed, we have so many other NGOs and other organizations who are involved in this space. Do you really think they are making the desired impact, or most of them are there for what they can get for themselves? Are they part of the problem? Are we making the
I
desired
think that
impact?
I'll give you a few examples. First of all,
Yeah.
in Nigeria at the moment, we have just about 20, 22 or 23 sexual assault referral centers, right? Now, a sexual assault referral center is a place where people who have suffered any form of sexual and gender-based violence can go and get free medical, free legal, and free psychosocial care. Now, of the 24 sexual assault referral centers in the country, more than 70% are funded solely by international partners. More than 50% of them are midwifed by civil society organizations. So what was your question again? When you look at who's feeding or who's filling the deficiencies of government, I mean, even look at my organization. We're teaching young children about technology. Okay, great. So I have this pack of cards that we created because we wanted to teach about technology. We're filling gaps. And I think that, unfortunately, what governments that are deficient in leadership often do is they outsource that government, or they outsource that governance to civil society organizations. So while there are bad apples, I'm definitely going to agree with that. But I worry every time people try to make civil society organizations the whipping boy for the country. You want to hold civil society organizations to more accounts than you're holding the people you elected to lead, or you want to outsource your advocacy to civil society organizations when you are not asking questions and demanding responsibility from the people that you elected to lead. I know people who, even in the height of the lockdown, and I think I referenced it earlier, would go out into remote villages to rescue women, to rescue girls, even to rescue boys who had been sexually assaulted, several times, because where there's supposed to be response from government, there's none. So yes, they are making an impact. I have seen this impact. As a matter of fact, I'm inspired every single day by the work that people within civil society organizations do to ensure that the lives of citizens are better. The flip side to that is, whether we like it or not, civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations are not supposed to exist in perpetuity. So they're not supposed to exist forever. Right? This is because a good chunk of their work is supposed to advocate for changes in policy, advocate for changes in governance that mean that the lives of citizens are better, and therefore, almost as it were, render them redundant. But if you look at Nigeria today, I was saying recently that whether we like it or not, everybody is now an advocate, everybody. Because there's always one thing or the other that isn't going as it should go. There's NSAS. After NSAS, there's this, there's that, there's the other. It's almost as if there's always a reason for citizens to continue to raise their voices. The difference between citizens, individual citizens, and civil society organizations is that the civil society organizations have some sort of structure. So no, I disagree, almost vehemently, that civil society organizations are not doing the work that they're supposed to do. There are bad eggs, but I think that the entire poultry of government is rotten, and we should focus our attention there.
Okay, thank you, Chioma. Thank you, Sonny. And I'm going to hand over to you, Sonny, in a few minutes. But Chioma, I want to ask you a question. What is 2023 looking like for you? What do you think is going to happen in another 1 year, 9 months' time? Where do you think the leadership of Nigeria is going to head?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I think that we are surrounded by an increasing number of negative indices. So whether it's education, I think you had touched on that, whether it's maternal and child health, whether it's poverty. And as you know, we are now the country with the world's highest number of extreme poor, whether it's access to opportunities, employment, etc. The indices don't look good. It is almost as if politicians have weaponized poverty. As a matter of fact, if you look at the 2019 elections, the cost of votes, right? So when politicians would buy votes, it's actually gone down because there's more votes to buy. And this is because there are more people who are hungry. And so you can imagine what it would be like in 2023. And so I'm optimistic. But I'd say I'd call it careful optimism, because while I do believe that something must give, I, however, think that people have been beat down so much, it will be tough for that thing to give. But I do think we're on the cusp of something in Nigeria. I think that it's I think we're on the cusp of something. I think it's interesting that a few months, well, a couple years to the polls, there are no strong contenders that people can see. There's just a lot of rumors, and there's just a lot of, prospecting and postulations by me. However, it also means that there's going to be a lot of, noise and, activity, needless activity, before the main challengers from the different parties come up. But I do believe that Nigeria is on the cusp of something, and I'm really, really trusting God that there's a lot more intentionality in the selection of our leaders by citizens come 2023.
What do you think I can do to ensure that this intentionality that you mentioned is put into place, to ensure that people are better informed, to ensure that people can make better choices and take better informed decisions towards 2023 or come 2023?
I think that we should have more conversations. You, sir, have a very, very massive platform, but you also have a lot of access. And I don't mean access to politicians, I mean access to other religious leaders. Imagine if all religious leaders preached to their people and told them, don't sell your vote. Imagine if in church, the same way, some pastors are asking their people, please get vaccinated and take all the precautions to avoid the spread of COVID-19. Imagine if religious leaders were asking their people, do you have your voter card? INEC has said they can register people in churches. How many churches are taking advantage of that? INEC has said they can register people at mosques. How many mosques are taking advantage of that? So I think for you, sir, I think it's to convene these conversations, more of these conversations, wider platforms, town hall meetings in churches. There's a lot of young people who are going to turn 18 by the time 2023 rolls around. Have we captured those hearts and minds for the right reasons? When churches and mosques go into communities for, charitable work, are we speaking to them about the quality of their leaders? Otherwise, we will keep doing this charity work. I attend a church here in Abuja that has set up a free school. Pastor Sunday Ogidibo of Holy Hill Church set up a free school. It's literally called Gratis School. And I'm on the board of that school. And essentially, it's providing education. We shouldn't be providing free education, because this is where, and I speak again about, civil society and churches filling the gaps that governance should fill. And so it is for, it's calling on religious leaders to have these conversations with their youth, to have these conversations with the mothers, with the fathers in the churches, and say, have you gotten your voter card? What are the criteria that you're holding in your hand when you go out to vote? Those conversations are super important. They may not seem like they will be useful, but they're super important. And in Nigeria, and I guess in Africa, religion is a very strong hold. Has a very strong hold on people, has a very strong hold on congregants. And so I think that's what you can do.
All right, that's good. That's very interesting. We're going to be taking some questions very soon from everybody on the platform. There's quite a few people on the platform, and then we'll take the questions one by one. Are you going to run for office at some stage? Do you have that thought in your mind at this point in time? And I want you to speak to the subject, the power of your voice. What do you think we can do? Okay, those two questions, and then we'll start to take questions from the platform.
Great. Am I going to run for office at this time? No, because I believe that I am more graced and I'm more equipped to function in this place where I am, which is to advocate, which is to hold people to account. I have two members of state house of assembly in 2 states in the Southwest that are like mentees of mine, and we continue to have conversations, and I continue to encourage them, and they're women. And so I'm always telling them that your conduct in this office is going to be a major determinant of if other women will, one, be allowed into this place, if it will open the door for more women, and if you will come back. So I don't think I'm going to run for office. I might in the future, but I don't think, I haven't heard God telling me to run for office. Neither have I heard the cries of my people, which is what politicians say. So yeah, there's that. But as far as the power of our voices are concerned, I think that growing up in the kind of family that I did, like I mentioned, my father is a bishop now. He was a pastor at the time. I think he was a very serious deacon at the time I was born. And my mother is a PhD holder in educational foundations. And one of the things that I remember was there was nothing I ever wanted to do that my father said I couldn't do. And so from a very young age, I have been very outspoken. I have been very, loquacious. I have been everything I wanted to be. At some point, I wanted to be a truck driver where we lived in Warri and they had all of these trucks moving up and down. At some point, I wanted to learn how to make beats. And I said that was the profession I wanted. And my father actually paid for me to learn how to make beats. He's still waiting for the returns on that investment. At another time, I wanted to be a newscaster. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a doctor, but I couldn't pass math or any sciences. And I remember bringing my JAM result home and my father and mother looking at it. And then my father said, you cannot read medicine with this result. But I think I've been blessed to have a family that, are just literally standing behind me. My mother and father always say, we're standing with you, spiritually, financially, in any way that you need. And I think that has, in a lot of ways, strengthened my voice. I remember being in South Africa in 2019 for an event, and South Africans were on the street protesting, and my father was calling me and he said, don't join them. And I'm like, don't join who? And he said, I saw that people are protesting. This is the type of thing you like. Don't join them. And I'm like, I don't even know what they're protesting about. And he said, I know, but before you know what it's about, I said, let me call you and tell you, don't join them. You won't understand what they're saying. I eventually joined another protest in South Africa, not just that one, because I didn't want to disobey him. But about the power of my voice. So, and I understand that a lot of people might not have had the background that I have to be able to, for instance, study social media for a master's degree, right? Where a lot of people told my father, your child is going to study Facebook. But he asked me, he was like, is this really what you want to do? And I said, yes. And he's like, you know what? I'll support you. And he did. But about building your voice, one of the things that I've done over the years, and I have 6 points that I'll talk through very quickly. The first of them is knowledge. I've said that before. You cannot speak about things you don't know about. You cannot advocate for things you don't know about. You can't also, for instance, the federal government has an SSMPA law, which is the Same-Sex, Marriage Prohibition Act. You cannot then say you want to advocate for people to be able to get married in a church or in a mosque. Why? Because we have a law in our constitution that prohibits that, right? So that's where knowledge comes in. And a lot of times people get into trouble because they're advocating for things that they don't have complete knowledge about. So your knowledge leads to your convictions, and then that conviction should take you back to a place of knowledge to then ask yourself, what can we do? For instance, with sexual and gender-based violence, we realized getting the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act passed was a big way to go, which is why we went that way. Now, after you've done knowledge, conviction, knowledge, you need to build a team. And I speak, of this because it's very important. And a lot of times you see, activists or advocates duplicating what they could have come together to do. And collaboration is such a strong force, right? And oftentimes they can't dwell in unity, which is a problem. But build a team. I'd also say find a team. I'd also say join a team, because you don't have to lead it. There's a lot of things that I've done I didn't lead, which is why my bio says I've either led or functioned in leadership teams. I haven't led all, right? But find a team. If you've done your research and no team exists, then build one. And then look for people with like minds who will come together and do it with you. If you take your mind and take your heart off who is going to get the glory for a thing, you will go very, very far. Are we just trying to get this work done? If you can just take your mind off who is going to be the leader, you'll go very far. So that's that, build a team. And then create a plan. And because we're in Nigeria where anything can happen, create a number of contingency plans. So if we want to protest on this day and they say no, what can we do online? What can we do if we're not allowed to do this? What can we do if we're not allowed to do that? So think about things like division of labor. Who is the writer in the group? Who can write press releases? Think about the media manager. Who can engage the press? Who's the person more likely to fill a room with pressmen if you want to have a press conference? Who is gifted with graphics? Who's gifted with oratory? Who is the person who has links to policymakers? Division of labor is super, super crucial. The other thing is seek counsel. A lot of times I've learned things on this whole, advocate journey that I would never have known if I didn't talk to older people. So seek counsel is super, super crucial. Seek counsel, talk to people. I have a bunch of people that God has really blessed me with, that I can go to and say, oh, I want to do this. This is what we're thinking about. And then they can be like, never, don't try it. Here are some possible pitfalls. And then you realize your mind didn't even go there. So seek counsel. The other thing I'll say is be honest and communicate, because unfortunately, Nigerians are cynical for good reason, right? We've been lied to a lot by our leaders. But the truth is, we often don't give second chances. So you want to be sure that when you come out, you are coming out as honestly and as, straight-laced as you can. So be honest and communicate successes, communicate failures, communicate mistakes, because everyone's human. What people just don't want is to think that they've been lied to or they've been taken for a ride. And then, number 6, I had mentioned that earlier, learn the lessons, define what your success will be. You might not bring all the Chibok girls back, but you will force a conversation on security spending in Nigeria. You might not be able to go to the National Assembly to reduce the monies they take home, but you can win the knowledge of what even is spent within the National Assembly. For instance, Enough is Enough Nigeria spent 7 years on the Open NAS campaign before the National Assembly then told us this is how much goes into the National Assembly. So define your success. It might not be what you think, but where is that win? The Not Too Young to Run bill, for instance, had 3 components. A lot of people just know about, the age reduction bit, but there was also capping campaign spend, and there was also one on independent candidacy. The National Assembly threw out those 2 for obvious reasons, but we won one. So we could have said, oh, we failed. We went for 3 things. We only got 1, but we got 1 and we got a big one. So define your success and be guided by it. And then I'll say rest, because Nigeria is a lot. It's a lot. Rest. Take time to rest. Take time to re-energize yourself. Every now and then I invite a bunch of young women to my house and we cook, we eat, we watch a movie, we do some yoga. All of us are advocating for one thing or the other. I say it's a time of fellowship. There's place in the Bible that talks about how good it is for brethren to dwell in unity. The Spirit of God dwells in that type of place. Now, we might not even be doing anything like, overly religious, but it's just sharing a meal together. Everybody talking about the challenges they face, etc. And you leave those types of things really, really energized. So find time to rest, find time to energize yourself, and then just rinse and repeat, because the problems in Nigeria are a lot. My big number 8 is recognize and lean into whatever higher power you subscribe to. And I mean, for me, I'm a Christian, I believe in God. And so there's some times when, I'll give a quick personal story. 2020, we heard that a state had passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And so I called my friends and we're very excited. We're like, yes, our map is changing, right? But same afternoon, I heard that a young girl had been gang raped and killed. And I remember I crumbled, because I just said to myself 2 things. 1, we're not working fast enough. 2, this thing isn't making sense. And I cried and cried and cried and cried. And I remember calling my mother and I'm like, this thing is going to kill me. We're not winning. We're not winning this thing. And she prayed with me. And one of the things she said was, I pray that God will give you peace so that you can sleep, because when you wake up tomorrow, everything will be clearer. And she finished praying for me and I went to bed, and a few friends of mine organized for me to go to a spa and just get some R&R. And I did have clarity, the next day. So there's something very powerful about leaning into your source, whatever that source is. For Christians, it's one thing. For Muslims, it's another thing. For traditional worshipers, it's another thing, right? Everybody worship whatever it is you want to worship. But recognizing and leaning into that higher source of power is absolutely crucial in a place like Nigeria. So that's it. Those are my 8 on the power of your voice.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be asking the backroom to play us a video, and I'll ask you to please speak briefly to that video, your thoughts on it, and then we'll open the floor for questions, which I'm going to be asking my co-anchor, Sonny, to present. Backroom, the video, please.
mentality, which I think has allowed a very small group of people to take over those countries politically, but also economically. And that's why you have something like, I think the World Bank says between 60 and 70% of Africa's capital shifted out of the continent. It's in banks in Europe and Asia and maybe America as well. But these people just do what the colonialists.
I think we can continue, Pastor. Thank you. I think we got a little bit of a challenge with that video. I do apologize. Let's take questions. If you have any questions, yes, Uncle Ephraim, your hand is up. Who else has a question at this point in time? Okay, let's take Uncle Ephraim. Please ask your question. Sonny, please coordinate this section of the thing. Uncle Ephraim, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you.
Hey, I didn't raise my hand to ask any question, but I think she's done a good job, and that's one of she should be one of our front runners in 2023. Whether she likes it or not, I think she could be one of our governors or in the government. You need people like that. She's well spoken and so on, and I think she's on the right track. But again, I think she spoke very well in terms of that. The problem is not just the corruption; it's lack of leadership we have. If the head is rotten, the tail is bad. So that's just our problem. Our children can't have jobs. None of them can work. None of them they can't even afford to pay their rent. We parents, the older generation, we still maintain them, and that's not good. So people like her should come into government. So she should be one of your teams. Congrats, lady.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chioma. I think you've heard Uncle Ephraim Paluge. He's in his 70s and he's been through Nigeria, around Nigeria.
I'm 78, going 78.
Only 78, Uncle. Don't let me tell them about you. 78, amazing. You look good for 78. So he's really, really concerned about Nigeria, and therefore he's saying to you that don't think that you shouldn't not think of getting involved, And, part of the challenge in Nigeria is that we just don't have enough capacity, enough good people getting involved in this thing. And that's why it seems as if, let me use the word, the not so good people are driving the thing and running their states from Abuja. It's because that's the way they think. So let's fill that question again, Chioma. What do you want to do? Are you going to run? And how are you going to encourage other people to run? And after you answer that, I think my brother Anthony from the US is going to ask his question. And then Sonny, just carry on from there. Thank you.
Anthony, please unmute. Please unmute, Mr. Anthony. While we are waiting for Anthony Agwuegbo, I think Benjamin Umeza, if you can unmute, kindly ask your question.
Good evening. Chioma, you spoke so well. I just want to ask a quick question. This afternoon, I was from a couple of Nigerians, and they complained heavily about Nigeria and its problems and our problems. And I was like,
Olu,
I asked the question.
unmute Chioma, please. Sorry.
Okay, I asked the question, which of you is willing to go back home to fix these problems? One of them said they will never go back home. They rather die here than they never go back home. So I just want to know, what's your motivation? Like, now Canada is a buzzword, migration and immigration, everything is a buzzword. What is it that keeps you there? Like, what's your motivation like? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a really special question, because the truth is, I have thought about leaving, but not because, I've thought about leaving, but mainly because I'm tired, right? Because it's like, you know what, let me just go to a place where there's light, where there's internet. You know, about 5 days ago, I was dragging my fiber optic provider on Twitter because, you know, they didn't do well with my address, and I had 2 men come to my house, and after they left, the fiber optic provider then called me to say people were coming to my house. Turned out they didn't know those men were coming to my house, and I'm like, I'm a young woman, I live alone. How are you not aware where my address is as far as your chain of command is concerned? You know, so anything could have happened when those 2 men came to my house, and the first thing you would do is deny that you sent people there. So the truth is, things are exhausting, and I have considered leaving a few times, if we're being really honest with ourselves. But if I left today, I can't carry my father, because my father will not leave his church. I can't carry my mother, because my mother will not leave, you know, my dad. I can't carry my brother, his wife, and his baby. I also can't carry my sister and her children. So it's like, I'd be leaving, but I'd be leaving a big chunk of my life and a big chunk of my heart in Nigeria, which doesn't make any sense. So that's my simple answer to your question. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I think that if I'm not able to do what I can to ensure that, you know, Nigeria is a nice place for my parents to live in, for my siblings to live in, for my nieces and nephews to live in, then I guess that's what drives me, right? My parents are in the East. And when I think about IPOB running amok, I think about the fact that every time they stop a car and people are harassed, those could very easily be my parents, because my parents like to travel around. So these are kind of the things that just continue to push me to do the things that I do, because it's like, you know, Nigeria is almost like Russian roulette at the moment, and you literally don't know what could happen. You know, you literally don't know, and you don't want to wait for a thing to happen to the people that you love before you decide to get involved, and before you decide to ask questions, and before you decide to take action. So I guess that's my motivation. To the question about, you know, whether I really want to run for office, and I think I saw something in the chat asking me to go to the local government. I think there's something about being aware, right? And there's an awareness. First of all, I must pay, you know, great compliments to Uncle Ephraim, or Daddy Ephraim, who is going to be 78 and looks amazing. My father is going to be 70 in a few days, and we're all like super excited. But to see, you know, someone look almost 78, well, someone who's almost 78 looking that good, you know, I just can only pray for, you know, more health, more life, and all of those things. But to the question about whether I'm going to run for office and if I'm going to go back to my local government and all of those nice things, I think there's a thing about being self-aware and knowing where your capabilities lie. Like I said, if you need a doctor, you're not going to have a plumber or a carpenter work on your body because you like them, or because they're nice, or because maybe they sound great, or because they seem like they know what they're doing. I think that you actually need a doctor. I do not believe at this time that I am graced for politics from the front of it. I think that I am better at supporting people. For instance, my organization for the 2019 election supported about 30 to 40 women, right, with communications, communication strategy, with even as we went as far as helping them design their posters, because all of these women were first-time aspirants. And, you know, we looked at some of their posters and we're like, people won't even know where to vote for you. So we designed their posters, we taught them how to, we brought in people to teach them, comms brought in people to teach them how to turn data into stories that, you know, that would resonate with their communities. And we did all of that. That's where I see my strength. I'm a communication strategist by training. This is my strength. My strength could change, right? So I could wake up tomorrow, God would tell me, go and climb a mountain. And they will say, okay, God told me. But till I'm absolutely clear about that, I've not been called into politics. That's my answer.
Great. Thank you very much, Chioma. That's fantastic answer. And we're hoping that God will speak to you sooner, maybe before 2023, so that we'll have the benefit of having you do something. I mean, people are rooting for you very passionately. Thank you for that very good answer. Anthony Agwuegbo will either make his comments and ask his question, and then we'll take it up from there. Thank you, sir. Anthony.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Chioma, thank you for your work. I've never watched you before, but it shows you're very enlightened. And, you know, the question I have, because as a teenager in the 70s, I'd always known that Nigeria was going to have a lot of problems. And the question I have is, my observation too, mental slavery, you know, inferiority complex is so deep. We don't appreciate it. I'm in America for almost 35 years. And I can tell you that if I'm here for 1 million years, I can never get used to it. I'm doing very well here. I'm in New York City. But, you know, what we're looking for in Sokoto is already in Sokoto, Nigeria. Now, when it comes to like inferiority complex, here's what I mean. We can't pay our doctors, young guys, as hard as medicine, some worthless naira. But we're ready to go to Europe, India, to go and die, paying millions and millions of pounds. I mean, this is mental slavery. This is inferiority complex. Our seaport is not working. We talk about unemployment. The seaport, there's so many jobs tied to the, you know, the swiftness of goods in and out of the seaport in any country. And so on, without belaboring the point. What do you think, you know, mental slavery, inferiority complex, our Black skin is the best in the world. I learned this on the street in America. White folks at about 40 or so, the skin falls apart. It's just the way it is. It's like not properly cooked, like drop off the conveyor belt at 50% completion. I'm not trying to stigmatize anybody, but we got problems. We got, in our heads, we got problems. So you see our politicians, they have all these monies in all these banks overseas. Once anyone drops dead, that money is gone. I have a bank, I have bank accounts here in America, and I had to make it a point to have my daughter and my wife's names in my account because the banks are designed not to let out one penny once you're dead. So what do you think, what role do you think mental slavery, inferiority complex is playing to devastate our very beautiful country?
That's a big question. Thank you very much. I mean, I think you've already given the effect of this mental slavery, right? So you've told us how it's playing out for people. But I think I want to speak to the solution to that, which is the fact that in the same way people were orientated in one way, right? To not trust in the power of their abilities, to see everything white as superior or everything white as the answer or the solution. I think there's an opportunity for young people to reorientate themselves. And I say this because I think that people should take responsibility for their own knowledge, right? It would have been easier for me to say, oh, we need to be taught. No, this is not the age of anyone teaching anyone anything. There are troves of knowledge online. So the same way we go online to use social media to have a good time, it's the same way people must invest in knowledge. And that's why my 8 points for, you know, the power of your voice, I had knowledge as 2 points. because knowledge is absolutely, absolutely critical. You know, knowing who you are, knowing what you're on this earth to achieve, knowing your purpose. And I don't mean to sound like a preacher or a motivational speaker, but these things are mad important so that you know what you can say no to. I talked about turning down an opportunity to work for one of the richest men in Nigeria in 2011. A friend of mine actually showed me a bag of money that he had been given just for saying yes to work on the campaign. And it wasn't a bribe or anything, it was his pay. But in the back of my head, I kept on hearing what my father said. I cannot be praying against a person and you go and work for them. And this and that and that, and these are the reasons. And that's why I didn't take that work. Would that money have looked nice on me? Yes. Maybe I would have bought a house somewhere in the countryside. Maybe I would have even left the country. But there was something in my head, the voice of my father. And so for young people, I continue to say, it's kind of like, who are you listening to? And especially for people in the diaspora, I say to them that when you're sending money home, right? Because we all know that, the monies that people outside the country send into Nigeria, go a very long way in ensuring that the country is not worse off than it is at the moment. So as you're sending that money home, send it with a message. Don't let it go empty. As you're sending it to that young person in the village, have they gotten their voter card? What work are they doing? Right? This money that you're sending to them, is it for them to feed today, or is it for them to secure their feeding for tomorrow? Is it the fish you're sending to them, or are you sending them money and telling them this money is for you to learn how to fish? So I think there's also responsibility on people living in the diaspora, right? For instance, if you look at IPOB today, a lot of IPOB's funding comes from outside Nigeria. People are not being honest with themselves. Because why are we funding an organization that doesn't have a clear path to whatever it is that they want? And I say this as a bona fide Igbo daughter. What is the path? As a matter of fact, if we want to be really honest with ourselves, which governor in the Southeast would you take a country and put in their hand? So where are we going? And these are some of the hard questions. If you look at the indices in the Southeast, if you do the work, if you get the knowledge, you will realize there's nobody, none. And I say this with every sense of conviction that I would take, if it were mine to give, there's none of them I would take the country and put in their hands. So where are we going? And then we've now come to the point where people are starting to destroy other people's property in the name of, I want you to believe in me, instead of putting out knowledge so that people, on the strength of conviction from the knowledge you have put out, decide, you know what, I want to follow this movement. I believe this is the movement for me. So there's a big role that people in the diaspora have to play. But I also think there's also, responsibility on young people, on old people, to seek the knowledge that helps them make better decisions. That's my answer to that. Thank you for asking.
Great. Thank you very much, Chioma. Brilliant answer. Thank you, brother Anthony. I like your answer about if it was yours to make. There's nobody in the Southeast you would put the country in their hand. But many people will counter you and say that haven't seen the people who we have put the country in their hand, whether it was willingly or they took it, that almost anybody in the country can actually take this country and do whatever they like with it. But
so to be very clear, because this is often misinterpreted. I was referring to the 5 governors of the Southeast, just to be very clear. And then to answer your question again, to comment on what you just said about looking at the state of things. There's a place in the Bible that talks about, forgive me, I'm a bishop's child, we have to keep coming back to the Bible. The path of the just keeps shining brighter and brighter, right? There's also a place that says, I wish above all things that you prosper. I cannot be wishing that because I am in a terrible place now, I'm looking for a place that's less terrible. No, I'm looking for a place that's good. And that's what knowledge gives you. New Zealand, do they have 2 heads? Denmark, they have, they're not wearing masks anymore. The country has come back to normal. They're having festivals. This is because they have tackled COVID properly. Taiwan, the minister for digital, the digital minister, right, came up with a solution for misinformation in the country. In Nigeria, we banned Twitter in the name of misinformation. El Salvador, the president of El Salvador was on Twitter a few weeks ago talking about the introduction of cryptocurrency as one of their nation's currencies. And this was the conversation he held on Twitter Spaces. In Nigeria, Twitter was banned. So you have to think about What is the quality of leadership that we're looking for? And I think, every time I speak to people, I want them to get angry because we're missing out on so much. So if you come at me with looking at what we have now, I'm going to tell you, no, I'm not even looking at that. I'm looking at the fact that we can have so much more. There's so many countries around the world where citizens were giving money, not once, not twice during the lockdown. Did we have that here? South Africa, a few minutes away from us, created a system where in every hospital, doctors and nurses were able to, feed into a system when they were running out of PPEs. Did we have that here? Didn't doctors and nurses go on strike because they didn't have PPEs to treat COVID? We've seen legislators across the world be fined, be suspended because they hosted meetings or because they attended public functions, in the midst of COVID, where they had precautions and where they had rules about people congregating. In Nigeria, when people holding political meetings, were there any consequences? No. So we have to think about, I don't care how bad things are. I don't care about the people in office. I'm looking for better. I'm not looking for the least terrible. I'm not looking for less terrible than what we have now. I'm looking for better. I'm based on their track record, which is what I said earlier. That's the reason why I made that statement.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for clarifying that. That's very good. Olu, is your hand raised or?
Yes, it is raised.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question. I'll make your comment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chioma, for your presentation. It's really appreciated. And my question is based on the topic for today, the power of your voice. And I want to ask this question because from your bio that Pastor read earlier, you participated in almost all the agitations, let me use agitation, against bad governance and some other things. But my concern is that since 2015, it's like there's been a lot of quietness from your quarters. A lot of people from your constituency and a lot of good people in this country have not been speaking to government, and they have not been speaking up against injustice. Recently, like you said, Twitter was banned in Nigeria and nobody said anything. People kept quiet. They just moved on with their life as if nothing happened. Also, we discovered that the supposedly repentant Boko Haram are being recruited into the army. Why army that requested for better equipment are being charged for mutiny?
Yeah.
It baffles me how we are so complacent, especially the populace of this country. We keep quiet. We don't mind. Once it is not me or any member of my family, we are not concerned. The economy is in shambles. Schools were and sometimes they go closed for almost 9 months. Nobody said anything. We're just moving on as if that is the normal thing for us to do. At a time, the constitution of the president's cabinet and the choice of his service chiefs were all from the same quarter, and nobody said anything. From the judiciary to the army to the police to the custom, everybody, they are Fulani, Hausa Fulani. Nobody said anything. So I don't understand the kind of followership that we have. We are so passive. We are not interested in what is going on. The moment it is not directly affecting us, we are good to go. So what should we do? What should we do as citizens to ensure that we make our voices to be heard and that we compel our leaders to do the right thing by us? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a fantastic question. But let me correct a few misconceptions and a few inconsistencies with the question. You say that people have become quiet since 2015. I don't think that's so. I think, however, that people have become increasingly afraid, and there's a big difference. 3 years ago, a friend of ours was disappeared. till today, people are still asking, where's Daddy Atta? There are real consequences for advocacy. And I don't want to scare anyone who's on the call, but I know the precautions that I have to take sometimes. I know how I have a number of speed dial things just in case anything happens. I remember that during the End SARS protests, one of my biggest fears when my parents were going to come visit me was that I would be arrested while, and my mother would have to watch that happen because I knew it would kill her. So there are real consequences, and unfortunately, those consequences have become even more real for advocates. So I think it's uncharitable, and forgive me for speaking very strongly, but I do think it's uncharitable to say that people are not speaking. I have signed countless letters. As a matter of fact, quick story. After the ban, was the ban on Twitter was done, I think it was the 4th of June. A few friends and I signed a letter saying we will not stop, we will keep tweeting. And that letter, a few friends, who work in civil society organizations, we signed that letter. And that letter was read on a radio station in Lagos. I live in Abuja. It was read on a radio station in Lagos. And for some reason, whoever was reading out the letter read out all our names. Now, my father's immediate elder brother, I think, was listening to radio that day and heard. Some other people who were listening to radio heard my name. And so they started calling my father that, your daughter is one of the people defying the government. And so I had, I was probably in a meeting. I came out of the meeting. I had like how many missed calls on my phone. So I immediately thought, oh God, somebody has died. And I started calling my cousins and said, what did you do? What did you do? They read your name on a government station. What did you do? And I then had to trace it to see that, oh, it was the letter we wrote that, But imagine the amount of angst. Imagine the panic in my entire family. And the good thing is, like I said earlier, I've kind of onboarded my father to my lifestyle. This is who I am. Right. And so we had a conversation, and then he asked me, okay, take it easy. Time will fail me, to tell you of a time recently, actually, when my father flew into Abuja because he said, I heard there's going to be a protest, but I want to be with you so that I'll be sure you don't go for it. And so he came to Abuja. Right. Does that fall under, not speaking? So I do believe that people are speaking. I was privileged to do some research for an organization at the end of last year on the shrinking civic space. Whether we like it or not, I don't think Nigeria has ever seen an onslaught to shut down our voices like we have seen under this administration. And this is telling you the truth. Whether it is from new guidelines coming out from MBC, whether it's from fines for broadcasters, whether it's from, I was on a national television station, about a month ago, talking about insecurity in Nigeria. And when we're done, the head of the station said to me, you're going to get my station shut down. My friend Ohimai fled this country a few years ago because his program was uncomfortable for some people. People are leaving not just for economic opportunities, but because they're afraid. How many people fled Nigeria after EndSARS? How many bodies are unaccounted for? How many times did the government say nothing happened, and every day the story keeps changing, but those kids are dead. So except you have a second life that people can tap into when stuff happens to them, I don't think it's charitable to say that people have stopped speaking. The other thing to say is that you have a voice as well. Right. And I often say this when people try to outsource their advocacy to me or to other people. There's nothing special about me that makes me what I am today. It's just I believe this thing is bad, and then I don't stop talking about it till I achieve some sort of change around it. In the same way, what is the thing that's biting at you? Which is why if we come back to my 8 points, the first of them is knowledge about the problem. Knowledge about the existing legislation that allows that problem to thrive. And then you come into conviction. Okay, I know that sexual and gender-based violence is a problem. I know that if we have states that pass the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, we can get some remediation and some justice for people who have been abused or who have suffered. Therefore, based on that knowledge, I will then do this and that and that and the other. That's what I've done. What is everyone on this call doing? Imagine if, how many are we on this call? There's 100 people on the call. Imagine if 100 of us decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on this, I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to get 10 other people, only 10 other people, and we're going to talk about it. Imagine the type of, of ripple effects that would bring to the country. So I guess, my final thing to say is, everybody has a voice. My voice isn't louder than yours. Yours isn't louder than mine. It's just, what are you doing with it? Where are you speaking? In your estate? In my estate, after the incident I talked about, with my fiber optic provider, I called the estate manager, and by the time I finished with him, we have a standing rule: nobody enters the entire estate without calling the resident who is being visited. And it might seem like a simple thing, but I mean, why would the gates men bring 2 men to my door without letting me know? And so because I spoke up about that, I'm very strongly too, we have a new policy in place. This is just the estate where I live. What are you speaking up about? What is everyone on this call? Maybe this is the thing to take away from this, from this thing. What are you speaking up about? What are you using your voice for? Is it to constantly say, oh, Nigeria is this, Nigeria is that, Nigeria is that, or what are you doing about it? Are you looking for something to do? Because you can ask and people will support you. Do you want to join a campaign? There's so many campaigns, from health to education to security to sexual and gender-based violence to even the rights of LGBT people in Nigeria. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to do, to political representation for women, to FGM. There's so much. Widowhood practices. There's so much. There's so much. There's so much. And one advocate can't do it all. 2 can't do it all. 3 can't do it all. This is a country of over 200 million people, according to statistics, which I don't really believe, by the way. But what are you doing with your voice?
Thank you very much. The question to everyone on this platform: what are you doing with your voice?
Yes, sir.
What are you doing with your voice? I will take these 2 last questions from Charles and from Samuel Dada. I will ask that both of them ask their questions together so that you can take it, and then we wrap up with our final question for you, and then we close the session. So I will call on Charles Odion to make his comment or ask his question. Unmute yourself. And after that, Samuel Dada. Charles, over to you. Thank you. Unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Okay, good.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I thought they only still had girls like this from Norway. The girl from Norway, or those guys are fighting for the environment and stuff like that. I'm delighted, When I was your age 2, I started this fight. First fight was that the biggest fraud in this country is of the elites.
Yes, sir.
Of the banks who run troop money with Indians and Chinese people and have been pushing down the currency since 1989. Of university professors who their uncles and brothers give their daughters to, who they rape. Of women who disrespect their husbands and worship their pastors. Of what do you call them again? Obas and Obis and the rest of them who harbor kidnappers and keep guns in their store. I'm happy you made that request just now. There are 774 local government chairmen in this country. We should face all of them so they can answer why, if they got into office with a pair of shoes, they now have a house in Dubai, another one in Turkey, one in their own village, and the best cars. And yet they want you to take out Buhari's head. I'm not saying Buhari has done anything better. But those are the guys you need to look at. The elites, they're a fraudulent bunch, and they're the ones who hold us back. I'm very refreshed by your speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. Charles, Samuel Dada, you can unmute yourself. Okay. Samuel is gone off. Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead. I thought you've gone off.
No. It is where. Thank you very much. Chioma, please, I wanted you to, I know you've told me 6 months ago your position, but I still so much believe and convinced in your analysis, because I can see that you are very good in the planning and strategy. In fact, this is one of the reasons that made me to say, okay, we need people like you to work together with every other good intentions and people that want the best for humanity. please, I still want you to take it into consideration how you can work together with Pastor Itua and with many other people, because we need to come together as people that has a good, especially when it comes to women and children, because almost my two decades now in Europe, I've understood that to make a good society, you need to start with the women. You make them responsible with their children, especially. So I've seen these things over long, and everybody here, even most of Nigerians that are not well educated that comes to abroad, when you see them, you see the government make them to sit up, to sit right. So I think we need to start from there. And people like you, we need you to come together, even though you are not coming out to hand any political post, just to be in the planning and strategic structure of any political party, so that we'll be moving ahead. Maybe we have an handout where we will write it in language of every communities or any ethnic groups in Nigeria, so that people can move around. We have people that can speak in the language they understand, so that people can understand why they need to come together. Because one thing is lacking when it comes to Black man, we lack what we call community cooperation. I've seen it so long. In fact, even in Europe, they will just see you as somebody that is working for the police, or because you are a mediator, you are this, you are that. They don't even want to come together and work with you because they have their own way. But they are lacking. They are behind. Most of us are moving ahead in Europe because we enter into the system, we're integrated. So I think we need to work on that, to community cooperation. These are the more reasons why I'm being convinced when I spoke with you about 6 months ago. So I will just want you to look into that, because I know that you told me I'm very passionate about Nigeria, and I will never stop, because I have my children here and I want to bring them back home. So I just want to say this. Thank you very much. And thank you, pastors and everyone here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Samuel. Chioma, so as we bring it home, I will just sort of like ask our usual final question before you make your comment on Samuel and Charles' question. If you were the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, what will you do? You will take that, I can see you rolling your eye. You will take that together with the other two comments. Thank you. Yeah. Over to you. Go ahead.
So first of all, just wanted to say thank you for the kind words. I see some of them flashing on the screen from the chat. So thank you very much for the kind words to Mr. Charles, and to everyone really, for the kind words. Really grateful. I'm humbled by them. So thank you. To answer the question about, I think Samuel had made a point about, even if I'm not running for office, on how I can support people. I mean, I'd spoken to her, I'd supported women in the past. I'm currently in conversations with them, with an organization about, hosting conversations with aspiring politicians and politicians that are already in office to think about the construct called gender, and to think about the perception of women, because I think that a lot of things that happen in Nigeria today are because women or females are not seen the way that they should be seen, and it is important to get these knowledge bases changed before people get into office, because they will perpetuate themselves. And so I'm more than happy to, I'm always happy to have a conversation with someone, always happy to speak about the things that I know, always happy, even more importantly, to point you to others who are doing this great work, so that, they are able to shine as well, but they're also able to share the knowledge that they have, and we are all better for it. So, it's a yes. I have a lot of respect for Pastor Itua, a whole lot of respect for Pastor Itua. As a matter of fact, I was telling my mom and dad that, I'm going to be speaking with Pastor Itua this evening, and my father was like, why? And I said, well, he's going to be interviewing me, and it was like big flexing for my parents. So I'm very grateful for the privilege of this conversation. I'm very privileged to have been invited. But to answer the final question on what I would do if I was president, 3 things. Where there is no justice, right? You open the door for the devil to feed people's minds with whatever interpretations or appearances of justice that, might be good for them, but harmful for everyone else. And so I would first ensure justice. And if you look at Nigeria today, there's a lot of people who have suffered some form of injustice or the other. So whether it's from, Igbos and Biafra, to people in the Middle Belt, so the Jos region, the Plateau region, Benue, go to Kaduna, southern Kaduna, go up to the northeast, Boko Haram, go to Zamfara and all those areas, Katsina, then you have herdsmen and banditry and all of that. So there's a lot of points where people feel like, you know, they have been done great injustices. And so I would, first of all, go back into the archives, because if you look at 2014, we had that national confab, there's this other report, there's that report. Go back into those. What were some of the recommendations? How do we deliver justice to people so that they stop trying to get this justice for themselves? Because an eye for an eye leaves the entire world blind, and that's what's going on in Nigeria today. People do not believe that the government will be fair to them, and so they're seeking that fairness for themselves, often with great consequences for others. So I'd work on justice. I would also work on resource management. And by resource management here, I mean people. So the successes that Nigeria saw at various points in time in our democracy have been championed by people who simply brought in people who knew what they were doing. So we look at the times of Okonjo-Iweala, we look at the times of, you know, Aruma Ote, we look at the times of, you know, Omobola Johnson, we look at, you know, Nigeria has had times when it actually looked like we're making progress, right? So I would focus on who can do the work. And I would ensure that people in the key positions, you know, in the critical positions, so things like health, security, you know, finances, the economy, information, I would really focus on bringing in core professionals. Look at, for instance, NIPC and Dr. Yewande Sadiku, I think, and all of the tribulation she suffered in that position, simply because some people who had gotten used to dipping their hands into the national treasury felt threatened because she wanted to do the right thing. If I was president, that would never happen. Never happen. And I think the tragedy of what happened to Dr. Yewande is that we have almost effectively ensured that technocrats will run from public office. So who do we have? Charlatans, armed robbers, you know, people who will just be put in there by nepotism. Look at the challenges that Dr. Yemi Kale faced at NBS as MBS, you know, Statistician General, where if the indices were good, government would say yes. If the indices were bad, they'll say no, they have been manipulated. It's a joke, really. But yes, I would ensure, you know, I've talked about the first thing, justice. The second thing, resource management. Who is leading these places? You know, who is leading the critical sectors? Unfortunately, every sector is critical, yes. But if all your sectors are functional and security is rubbish, then, you know, then your sectors are not functional. So all animals are equal, if I can borrow that, but some animals and some sectors are more critical than the other. So I'd get people into those positions. And then number 3, I would allow people speak. I will allow people speak. I would open the floodgates, let everybody talk. If you look at the UK and how a citizen is crossing the road, a stone hits their leg, they don't stop talking till their counselor comes to that place to lift up that. I would allow people speak. You know, in church we say things like a closed mouth is a closed destiny. I think that Nigeria's destiny is getting truncated because people are not allowed to speak. So you smack a child or you hurt a child and you don't allow that child cry. Eventually the child decides, you know what, I'm going to take a bottle and break somebody's head, because there's so much pent up anger, there's so much pent up frustration, and there's no outlet. And so it's like I go out, you know, as I go out, I see the mobile police truck that tries to run me off the road because they're speeding somewhere. I'm accosted by the VIO person who tries to take money from me. This wants to happen, that wants to happen. By the time I come back, I'm exhausted. Not of my own making, but because every expression of governance that I should have enjoyed has contributed to frustrating me. But I cannot speak up, because if I speak up, the Minister of Information will say that I'm trying to embarrass my country. So I'd focus on 3 things: justice, resource management, and freedom of expression. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Chioma. You have spoken very well, and I believe we have spent our time very well the last 1.5 hours. We have really enjoyed listening to you, and you have given very punchy and direct answers to all our questions. We do hope that you find time to listen to what all the people are saying. The investment by your parents on your head will not only be reaped by your parents, but the whole country will benefit from this huge reservoir of knowledge that you have. We're indeed very proud of you. We are proud of the work you are doing. And in any way, you can liaise with Olu. Let's see what we can do together. This is also a movement that we're trying to push for good governance in Nigeria and trying to get the right people into office for 2023 and beyond. And we have been discussing with a lot of people, and we've had quite a number of views on this platform, and we are ready to work with everyone that is ready to work with us. Okay, so we are very grateful for the time that you took and all the answers you have given. We look forward to seeing you in person, maybe in Lagos sometime, so that we can can discuss more things together. All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Next week, we'll have another great guest on the program. And thank you very much, Chioma. God bless you. Our regards to the bishop and your mom.
I will. They'll hear. Thank you so much. I'm just going to run through the comments now. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for coming on the platform today. We are very grateful. Yeah, God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. God bless you.
Chioma, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you,
Chioma. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Chioma.
God bless you.
Government help someday.
Well said. Well spoken.
Thank you very much. Oh, the Lord be with you.
Okay. Thank you.
How can we reach Chioma?
Thank you very much.
What is the next? Where's the way forward?
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
You're smart. You're smart.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Okay. Send email address.
Yeah. If you want to reach Chioma, you can reach Olu Victor or reach our secretariat. Next week, we will be launching all our social media pages so that we can carry the conversation from here to our social media page. So all the speakers that we've had so far, we'll have them on there, and their contacts, if they want people to reach them, will be available.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. All right, I have to run off, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.